I'm James Brierton, an all-new edition of the Carolina Weather Group starts right now. It is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina, and welcome to a live edition of the Carolina Weather Group. We are going to be yet again talking about more ways that you at home can get involved in our broader weather community. Our guest this week is the Assistant State Climatologist for South Carolina, Melissa Griffin, and our own Frank Strait, who is going to be wearing two hats. He's the podcasting Frank, and he's also the day job severe weather liaison for the State Climate Office, Frank. And joining me on our Carolina Weather Group panelist is Jared Smith from Charleston, South Carolina. We'll get to them in just a moment. A reminder that this week's episode is brought to you by, and there's a theme here, a chance for you to expand your weather horizon. Join us and the National Weather Service at Columbia, South Carolina for the Advanced Storm Spotter class. That one is Tuesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. We had a very successful class with so many of you just last week with Chris Landolfi, a meteorologist at the National Weather Service. That was our basic class, and we hope that you will join us for that advanced class coming up on Tuesday, March 29th, 7 p.m. It's free. It's virtual. There's a link to sign up in the description of the show, wherever it is that you are watching or listening to this show right now. And if you are joining us live right now, then you know that parts of the Carolinas are seeing thunderstorms and some severe weather across the broader area today. Here's a photo from Tim Pounds in the Augusta area showing us dime-sized hail about 7:15. As we pop over to radar, you can see there are another line of thunderstorms coming through the Augusta area now at about 9:15. A few other thunderstorms once again coming back across the Orangeburg area. And things have calmed down a bit here where I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. But the only warning we have out right now is for the Catawba River in Gaston County, just to the west of Charlotte, where the persistent heavy rains today are causing some flooding along the Catawba River. Jared Smith will have a look at our severe weather outlook. And Frank Strait, I'm sure we'll get his opinion on it as well, too, after tonight's interview, because we had a severe risk today, and we're in a storm prediction center outlook for the next 2 days, if I'm not mistaken. So stay tuned. We'll get to that in just a moment. But let me bring back in our quad box. We got Jared in Charleston and double teaming us from Columbia, Melissa and Frank. I'm the lone North Carolina person, but that's okay. That's okay. Melissa, it is good to see you. Welcome back to the Carolina Weather Group. It has been a moment since we talked to you on the air, and we're happy to have you back for... Now, I'm going to get this wrong, and please correct me, but it is South Carolina Citizen Weather Observation Week?
You're close. You're close. Yes. No, it is actually South Carolina Citizen Weather Observer Week. So what we have done is gone through the governor's office and got a proclamation. So March 13th through the 19th, we are highlighting and basically just kind of giving a hurrah to all of our wonderful weather observers that help us monitor the weather and climate across South Carolina. So those are going to be those, Skywarn spotters, our National Weather Service cooperative of spotters and observers, and our CoCoRaHS volunteers. So really happy that we were able to get this proclamation from the governor, and more than likely we're going to try to continue to do it in the future.
So I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen right now for anybody who is watching us on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, wherever you may be, CoCoRaHS, spelled out on the screen, because it's a little bit of a mouthful if you're unfamiliar with it, Melissa. But this is another way this month we are trying to encourage people, everyday people at home, to get involved with weather. Refresh our memories. What is CoCoRaHS?
CoCoRaHS stands for the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, which is the reason why we took that big long name and shortened it down into a fun one that everybody can remember. It's a grassroots program that started out of the 1997 Fort Collins flood. The Colorado Climate Center at Colorado State University did a bucket survey to try and figure out how much rain had actually fallen in the area after a wall of water came through Fort Collins and destroyed, I think it was like it did like $125 million worth of damage just to the campus alone. So they went around, they were looking for anyone who had a rain gauge, and they just started finding people who were really interested in weather and had rain gauges, but they were rain gauges of all different shapes and sizes. They weren't consistent. So that meant we needed to get everybody to use the same rain gauge. And so that project started in earnest through National Science Foundation funding in 1998. And in the late 2000s, that's when everybody else kind of jumped on board and was like, this is a really interesting program to harness this idea that someone who's interested in the weather can provide information that's useful and be used by the National Weather Service, the climatology offices, hydrologists, utilities, mosquito control. I mean, there's just so many different uses of the data. And since then, it has spread not only across all 50 states, but we also have CoCoRaHS observers in the Bahamas, Jamaica. We have them in Canada. And so it has really become just this amazing program, and it's all done through citizen science.
Up on the screen right now, we have the CoCoRaHS reports from those volunteers over the past 24 hours. For our podcast listeners, we're looking at a map of the continental U.S. filled in with tiny little circles, and we can see kind of hot spots, if you will, where reports came in the past 24 hours. Not surprisingly, it's where it's been raining. And, we have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10 of an inch of rain recorded in portions of South Carolina. There's even one up almost in my neck of the woods in Fort Mill, South Carolina, showing almost an inch of rain there. So, Melissa, you mentioned some of the use cases for these reports. What are some of the ways that they impact your day-to-day in the state climate office?
So, CoCoRaHS started here in South Carolina in 2008. And since 2008, there have been about 73 observers that have been with that program for 14 years now. So we have 14 years worth of rainfall data from these observers. And they really do fill in the gaps. They're not necessarily in the same place where we get our regular observations. So, for example, during the 2015 floods, the floods that took place in October, there are only 4 official National Weather Service stations that are in the Charleston County area. But when we added in all of the additional observations that we were able to get from CoCoRaHS observers in that area, it made a completely different picture of the rainfall in that area. Yeah. We went from, the highest totals being between 16 and 18 inches just with the National Weather Service information to actually having totals that were almost close to like 28 inches of rain during that time period in the Mount Pleasant area. And if it wasn't for that data, we really would have missed that information. We wouldn't have been able to analyze it. So it's really good when it comes to these extreme weather, these extreme rainfall events. When we have these flooding events, it was instrumental in 2016 when Matthew came ashore, and even in 2018 when we had impacts from Florence. But one of the other important things about CoCoRaHS observers is 0 is probably one of the more important numbers that we get from them. And that is instrumental in tracking drought across the state. In the fall of 2019, we had really extremely warm conditions for the beginning of October. We had 100-degree days here in the Midlands. It's kind of unheard of. And we had gone through a couple of months of really low precipitation totals. And so being able to know exactly where those zeros were, where we weren't getting rain, where we had gotten rain from Dorian in actually September of 2019, we're able to get a better picture of where the impacts of drought were having the most, the most effects on agriculture, water resources across the state. So, as much as we love getting the rainfall total numbers, that 0 number is just as important.
Yeah, Melissa, absolutely. And I know down here in Charleston, one of the big issues that we run into constantly is flooding. I know it's shocking. Why are we Charleston flooding? Never. How do those observations factor in for flood forecasts, and how is that helpful for that?
So the observers, in addition to being able to put in like a 24-hour rainfall total, our observers are also able to enter in a significant weather report. So if they pick up 3 inches of rain in an hour, they can put that observation in with their account, because you get a CoCoRaHS account when you sign up, and that information goes directly into the National Weather Service AWIPS. They're forecasting like screens that they can see. They can take a look at it, they can look at radars, and then that will help them issue any particular warnings or, advisories that might be for some of our low-lying areas, especially in the Charleston area. I mean, we've got a couple of places, Frank and I know this here in Columbia, that if you sneeze wrong, it can flood, let alone have just an intense rainfall, over a short period of time that can cause some urban flooding. So there's the 24-hour total they can do, and then there's also these little intermittent ones they can do when they have some of these more significant events.
Yeah, I remember during that event, I don't think I was an observer yet. I don't remember a lot in the before times. So, it's been a stressful couple of years, but I remember, I live not too far from the airport, and a buddy of mine just, a hop, skip, and a jump from my house had, 5 more inches in that event than they recorded at the airport. I think that speaks a lot to the importance of the density of those observations too.
It does. Some people may take a look at that map that, James had up earlier with all the dots and see kind of the clustering in some of the urban areas and go, there are plenty of observations. They don't need me here. They don't need me in Columbia. They don't need me in Greenville. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, if you zoom in a little bit more on those, you can see that even those clustered dots are a little bit spread apart. And there's all these open areas that we don't get observations from. One person can make a huge difference when it comes to rainfall. It is so varied across even short distances. Even we can see right there, just the little 3 that are kind of clustered together, by Lexington, and there's a difference in those rainfall totals. There's probably one of the one case study that we looked at was from Texas in May of 2008. And there was an observer who reported 7 inches of rain and no one around him came even close. I think the highest total next to him was like a 1/2 inch. And it was one of those ones where it kind of was like, wait a minute, did he maybe enter something in wrong? And they reached out to him. They looked at radar. And it sure enough, there was a thunderstorm that just kind of bubbled up and formed right over where he was. And it didn't move. It was a stationary thunderstorm. It dropped 7 inches of rain. And had that observer not been there to catch that, they wouldn't have had the ground truth value to go with those radar observations.
Right. And Melissa, one of the things that I discovered at a conference not long ago, and I can't remember if this was the 2019 NWA meeting I was at or whether it was the conference I was in Ankeny, Iowa, where this came up. But the College of Charleston did a study on just how much rainfall can vary over just how short of a distance. And I can't remember the details of this study, but I remember that they had a bunch of rain gauges set up on a roof in Charleston and found that it could vary considerably, even over 100 feet.
Yeah. And so that's having those observations, having that density really comes in handy.
Right. There's no such thing as observers too close together when it comes to rainfall. So if you want to be a CoCoRaHS observer, even if you got a buddy that lives 2 doors down from you, that's a CoCoRaHS observer, by all means, jump in and do this, because your measurement, it's not always going to vary a lot, but sometimes it will vary considerably, even over 100 yards or so.
And if I pull the map back up, I'm also seeing there are reports of 0 inches of rain. I imagine that's important as well.
Yes, those zeros are really important, especially in the eastern portion of South Carolina and North Carolina right now, where we're dealing with abnormally dry and severe drought conditions across portions of the state. So knowing that those areas have not gotten any rain is important as we get ready to go into another week of the U.S. Drought Monitor. And then the South Carolina Drought Response Committee is going to be meeting at the end of the month and looking at conditions and do we need to make any designations here in the state based on the lack of rain that we've had. So knowing where those zeros are is like super important. The other neat thing about that, and if you bring up that map one more time for me, James, if you zoom in, you can see all these great dots, but there are a lot of areas in the state where we don't have a single observation. There's some counties. Look, James zoomed right in on one. Fairfield County there.
Sorry,
there's
Fairfield.
Yeah, sorry to call you out, Fairfield County, but there's not a single observer right now making reports in Fairfield County. There is a National Weather Service cooperative station in Winsboro, but there's more area in Fairfield County that we could use some observers, and that's not just here in South Carolina. I'll give some love to North Carolina too. There are some there are some hot pockets in and around the Triangle, Charlotte, but you can get into eastern portions of North Carolina and find areas where we're still looking for observers.
I think there's a real opportunity for me because I'm near Matthews and there are no reports in the Matthews area.
There you go, James. You're going to have to sign up and be a CoCoRaHS observer.
Sign up in April, though.
Yeah, sign up in April. Not during our campaign right now.
Well, that's right. So there's a campaign right now nationwide to see which state can recruit the most number of new observers this month. Is that
correct.
How this works?
Yeah.
How are you doing, South Carolina?
Well, South Carolina's in third place right now with 38, which isn't that bad. But unfortunately, Minnesota, I don't know what they're doing up there. If they're just like making people sign them up at the Welcome Center as they come in, because they have 254 new signups in just the first half of the month. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up with them. But Wisconsin is not that far off with 66. I'm kind of hoping we can take that second place trophy this month.
I just swung the map over there to see exactly if they were, what their density looked like, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I wasn't sure if they were just inactive signups, like they were just stuffing the ballots, but
no,
it looks like they got them.
They've got some, yeah. Most people who sign up get started. So
South Carolina, you're halfway through the month now, and you're in third place. So we either need to finish strong and hold on to that third place win, or try to eke them out with a nice comeback from behind. North Carolina, we gotta get going. I'm outnumbered tonight.
Sorry, James.
I feel
like
we
have more North Carolina people here, but tonight more South Carolina people here.
That's a rare event, actually. I feel like we need to do like an airdrop of Stratus rain gauges in Fairfield County.
I might have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, just get just put a bunch on parachutes and just airdrop them in, kind of like a Marshall Plan, but for CoCoRaHS.
Yeah, I mean, I may have to do something like that. It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because I do have some rain gauges in the office, and I've been trying to target schools with them. So if there are any teachers that are watching or educators that are looking for a really good, fun project to put in the classroom, that CoCoRaHS is a great way to do it. Not only are you able to hit the weather and climate standards, but you can also do the math standards with this project too. And I've installed before COVID, I had installed 3 additional rain gauges here in the Midlands, and they were at elementary schools where the students were actually taking part in doing the observations.
We're looking at an animation on the screen right now for our visual viewers that shows a little bit of how this process works. But maybe, Melissa, you can give us a little commentary, a little director's cut to this animation we're looking at to provide us with the steps.
So the steps are there's a outer tube and an inner tube in the rain gauge that we're talking about, and the one that Jared mentioned earlier is called the Stratus rain gauge. It's a 4-inch diameter rain gauge. It's the same rain gauge that we use across the network, so we can have that standard measurement. Everybody using the same equipment. So when the rain falls in to that inner tube, that measures 1 inch of water. So 1 inch of water will fall in the inner tube, and then you can spill out that 1 inch, and then what's ever left over in that outer tube, you can use your funnel and pour directly back in there. So even if you end up with more than 1 inch of rain, it catches and collects in that outer tube. You just have to take your time to measure it out. That rain gauge is a high capacity rain gauge. It can hold 11 inches of water. So, and I have seen it hold 11 inches of water. My rain gauge, when I lived in Florida during Faye in 2008, I emptied it 3 or 4 times for a grand total of, I think I was at just under 21 inches during that storm.
Well, Melissa, you gave us some indication earlier about how those reports help climate and drought and long-term monitoring. Frank, you wear 2 hats here tonight, and you are the severe weather liaison to the climate office. I'm wondering, Frank, from your perspective, when you look at radar scope and it looks like this tonight and you have storms out there, how can you use citizen reports from CoCoRaHS as a part of your job?
Well, they come in handy, especially when I'm doing reports on past weather events. It certainly is nice to get those reports real time when there's weather going on. but they come in really handy as well when we have a major weather event that I have to write a report on. Like, for example, when I did a report on Tropical Storm Fred, when it made landfall in South Carolina, and I posted, I had to use a bunch of rainfall reports, and turns out almost all the reports I used were CoCoRaHS from CoCoRaHS observers from that report there.
Look at that.
That's what it looks like there. So yeah, I use CoCoRaHS observations all the time for rain and snow when we have a snowstorm, to see where the heaviest snow was, and sometimes trying to get an idea of what the snow to liquid ratio was for the snow. So all those observations help me out a lot. By the way, the reports like these, you can get them from the South Carolina State Climate Office homepage, and you just hit that research button there, and you can get that. And the newest reports are linked on our homepage too.
Oh, perfect plug, because I was just thinking to myself, there are that web address that I should read out for podcast listeners, the dnr.sc.gov/climate, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
Then if audio listeners are trying to get a handle on CoCoRaHS, CoCoRaHS, we will link it in the description of the show so you can go ahead and get started. Melissa, let me ask you this, because we had the storm spotter training class here at the Carolina Weather Group. We talk a lot about MPing. We're talking about CoCoRaHS. How do all of these things come together for someone who wants to be the trifecta citizen scientist?
They want to do the trifecta. It's the apps. The MPing is an app, all of the stuff that we submit as spotters through Twitter with location, information, tagging the right office. CoCoRaHS also has an app that makes it a lot easier for us to be able to put in our weather observations on a regular basis. So it can become part of a daily routine. Most people get up in the morning, go look for the newspaper, make a cup of coffee, go check that rain gauge, enter in that total, and it's off, and we're able to use it. So, it's just a fun way to do it. The other fun thing about CoCoRaHS is, in addition to having that value, that quantitative number, you can put comments in, and sometimes the comments are enlightening as a CoCoRaHS observer. And I know Jared's over there shaking his head because he's seen some of these comments that we've had. There was couple of months ago, we had some severe weather that moved through the Aiken County area, and one of our observers had mentioned something about seeing damage near his house that looked like possible tornado damage, and it piqued the interest of the the National Weather Service in Columbia. They actually went out and sure enough confirmed an EF0 tornado from that severe weather event, and actually verified one of their warnings. So those little tidbits of information that are included with those values can just be so enlightening and provide additional information.
Make some links in our chat tonight for people who want to go check out some of these websites. Do they need the official CoCoRaHS rain gauge, Melissa, or can they use any rain gauge?
No, they got to have that official one. And I know that's a bummer for some of us, because we have all of our awesome automated rain gauges and our sensor rain gauges. But by having everyone use the same rain gauge, we know that everybody is using the equipment across the entire United States. We're not having to take into account that someone might be using a Davis system or a Tempest or a different type of tipping bucket or a wedge gauge from Home Depot. So we really do stress using that gauge. And the reason we stress using that gauge is we've done side-by-side comparisons with that gauge and the official gauge that the National Weather Service uses for their cooperative weather observers, which is an 8-inch diameter gauge. And the catch over a year is maybe off by 1/10 of an inch. It's really kind of comparative, so we like to use that. The gauges run, depending on the vendors, and there are a couple of them, $35 to $40. And I know that might be a little bit of a sticker shock, but I had my rain gauge out in the Florida sun for 10 years, and I never had a problem with it. They're easier to clean than a wedge gauge. Once you get a little bit of, the mildew and the stuff at the bottom, it no longer becomes accurate. And so you're able to clean it out, keep it. And I know a couple of our observers recently that started when the program started here in 2008, have just recently, after 14 years, started to replace their rain gauge.
Well, you answered the question from Ryan, who's watching on Facebook tonight, asking how much that rain gauge is. Again, it sounds like $35, $40 or so. His follow-up question, can I do an observation like at the airport. I mean, I think Ryan would be making an observation as helpful as one at the airport, but he's going to be doing it manually with his gauge as opposed to that automated equipment at the airport.
Exactly.
That is some fantastic information, and I get it. Yeah, we want to make sure everyone's playing with the same equipment across the country as we can compare these side by side. Jared, you live in an area where we have some microclimates. Have you and your CHSWX expertise come across helpful scenarios, neighborhood by neighborhood?
Oh my goodness, all the time. I mean, it is quite fascinating because again, I being in a dense area, I think I get the most charge out of seeing, that really short distance between where was the pop-up thunderstorm that day. And it's like looking at the next day's reports, it's like, yep, it was there and nowhere else. It was so that is always fascinating. And it gives us a target area, for the next day. If we've got if we're in an active pattern and we have and we might be looking at the potential for, a multi-day heavy rain event. And, we want to look at the areas that got the most rain the day before for maybe, lower flash flood guidance, potential increased risk for, for flash flooding developing. That's one thing that's super helpful. Knowing where the zeros are is extremely helpful. I mean, there is nothing more satisfying than ticking off the zeros on the monthly zeros thing. I'm just saying, it's just bang, bang, bang. If you got your zeros, it's a really nice, it's a nice little interface. And again, like it is, it is invaluable for that post-event analysis too.
We saw that from Frank's report.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, there is so much. Rainfall is not just what falls at the airport. That's what that is the most important thing is like, oh, the airport is down, but I've got X amount in mind. And the other cool thing is that you do this long enough, you build up a record over time at your place, and you can see what your rain is like compared to your friend down the street. You can see it's like, oh wow, this is a really wet year compared to compared to years past.
You bring up a really good point, Jared, because some of the observers that have been with the program 10 plus years go back and they look at the previous, Marches or Februaries and go, this February was like the second driest February since I started observing. And after, I believe it's 5 years, it could be up to 10 years, CoCoRaHS data is now being stored in the National Archives. So NOAA is now actually archiving CoCoRaHS data. We've gotten long enough records at some of the stations that we've started keeping that data. So, that is something else that is just really just, it just shows the impact of someone being excited about whether they're wanting with one of these programs and just that going to be stored and can be used for past analysis and even looking at trends that have happened recently. So
I know I've used it a couple times in the ACIS database. You can pull CoCoRaHS compared to airport, compared to other automated stations. It's not that you need anybody else's, not that you need me to back up the assistant state climatologist and CoCoRaHS coordinator for South Carolina, but the data is so useful for so many of us in the weather community.
Well, I've identified a hole in my neighborhood, and I'm going to go buy one of these here probably immediately, because I'm pretty sure if I go back into our archive, I make this promise to Melissa every year, and I clearly haven't done it yet. So we have a couple different retailers all about the same price point. As we wrap things up, I saw Jared holding up his finger. He's got one more thought bubble there.
I've got a pro tip for when you get your gauge.
Okay, I'm listening.
Get the $10 or $15 like cleaning instrument that goes with it. Solid.
Okay.
Great investment. It is.
Clean pollen and leaves and things out of it?
Yes, especially now. Like I think the other day I had rainfall. I recorded 0.04 of an inch and a trace of pollen. Sitting on the
Yeah, I was just about to say we're getting to that time of year where I'm going to start forecasting pollen accumulations.
Yeah, pollen. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the South Carolina yellow snow is in full effect, and so you got to keep it clean to keep it accurate. I mean, that's you get
Yeah.
enough grime in there, and that's going to throw your numbers off. So
Yeah.
it's and there's nothing better than a clean Stratus rain gauge. I don't know. I love this hardware. It is just I mean,
It's
it is
simplistic.
really good hardware.
It's simplistic. And the fun thing about it is you never know who is with you observing and being a CoCoRaHS observer. So, I mean, I can tell you that there is a CoCoRaHS rain gauge that is on the field of a major Major League Baseball team has a CoCoRaHS rain gauge on their field. I can tell you that. I know there are a couple of pro football players that have rain gauges at their houses. And believe it or not,
Did you install them? Did you go to the pro
No, I
football
wish I
players'
would have
house? Oh, okay.
installed them.
Yeah.
But I also know that there are some local TV meteorologists that are also fans of CoCoRaHS and use the data on a regular basis.
That sounds right. I mean, that all sounds right, but
Yep.
Yeah.
I know Rob Fowler in Charleston is a very loud proponent of CoCoRaHS. Ever since he got his gauge, we won't say when he got his gauge. Better late than never. Love you, Rob. But he is a very vocal proponent of it, and that's awesome to see.
Yeah. I love seeing his Instagram pictures when he goes out and he's got rain in his rain gauge and he takes a picture and he's like reporting from Charleston County and he's got his total in there, and it's fun. It's a good way to get people involved. Not only am I using the data, but I'm also part of the program.
Well, Melissa, please don't be a stranger. Come on back anytime.
No worries. I can do that.
Best of luck taking down Minnesota.
I'm going to need it.
People can sign up right now at CoCoRaHS.org. Do they have to do anything in particular to get counted towards your March competition, or they just got to put their location in?
Just have to sign up. That's it. Just fill out the application that's on there. They get their own station identifier and station name that makes it very unique, so we're able to track everybody.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we are going to shift gears, as the cliche broadcast saying is, and check back radar right now at this coming up at 9:50 here on this Wednesday. And we are once again still watching kind of late night showers and thunderstorms. And I know Jared is prepared to talk to us about Storm Prediction Center outlooks for the next couple of days. And I'm glad Frank is here as well, too, to kind of weigh in. But Jared, why don't you just bring folks up to speed on this Wednesday? We had another flirt with severe weather today.
We did. And there were a couple warnings in South Carolina. I have not seen any storm reports, but there have been, as we opened the show with, and especially near Augusta and Martinez, we had some decent hail. Hail has been the story today, and it's been really interesting to see some of these left-moving thunderstorms, which we typically splitting storms are something that we associate with the plain states. So we've had a little bit of that action today, as a huge lumbering upper low just continues to rumble through the area, and that's what's gotten us the increased hail threat today. And I'll tell you, as we get into, as I'm going to pull up the outlook here. Let me take my face off of this real quick, and I'll just show you kind of what we've got going on. This is the outlooks at a glance going all the way to day 8. The Storm Prediction Center does day 1 to day 8. And so here is, going into day 8. Slight risk tonight, obviously, continues in the South Carolina low country. Those thunderstorms that James had up on the screen certainly could, be interesting over the next few hours. Hopefully those will eventually weaken, but certainly something to watch as that upper low lumbers through. Thursday, relatively quiet across the area. It's gonna be a nice day. Thursday's looking pretty good. Friday, we get back into the risk for severe weather, primarily towards the coast late, maybe a little bit earlier as you get further west there. Saturday morning, it looks like they've outlooked a slight risk of 15% area along the coast, the North and South Carolina coast. That would be kind of a morning, early afternoon threat for damaging winds and maybe even a tornado. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, severe weather in parts of no severe weather on Sunday. A couple areas outlined on Monday and Tuesday, well to our west. And on day 8, typically the predictability just goes a little bit low, although there was a day 8 outlook for South Carolina and for the Carolinas a few days ago, which was somewhat rare. We don't see that very often. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be a little busy, but I think that it's March. This is something that happens.
Season.
Yeah, it's transitional. Yeah.
If you need any reminder beyond the Claritin that's on my desk, not a paid sponsor, just looking at that Storm Prediction Center outlook is enough to remind us that it is March and it is spring. Even though last weekend we were talking about freezing temperatures, that is March for you in a nutshell. Frank, at a glance, what type of severe weather are we talking about? Are we talking about tornadoes, hail, wind, flood?
Well, for tonight, what's left of the event that we're dealing with now is likely to just be a hail situation. I mean, some locally gusty winds can't be ruled out. I guess the tornado risk is not quite zero, but it's very low, I think, going forward tonight. You heard James or rather Jared talk about the big lumbering upper level low, and that's what it looks like on the satellite picture right now. Is the water vapor imagery showing that upper low that's drifting eastward. It's sitting over or spinning centered over central Georgia right now and headed our way, and it's giving us another round of thunderstorms here this evening. And you think, well, now we're in the evening. Why are we getting this another round of thunderstorms? Well, the temperatures near the surface aren't dropping all that much this evening. It's only come down a degree or two from the highs today, but it's getting progressively colder aloft. And so that's making things more unstable. And so we're getting the thunderstorms form in an increasingly unstable environment around South Carolina. And that's why they're going. So here's the radar view that James has and Jared has for us. And thunderstorms are popping all over the place. Let me switch over to mine. There's the Columbia radar, and you can see there's a few thunderstorms around the Midlands of South Carolina and still in the central Savannah River area. The Orangeburg area is seeing a pretty good one. There's a special weather statement out for that right now. They had a pretty good thunderstorm earlier. You heard Melissa and I talking about that one. She ended up driving through it on her way back from Charleston earlier today. Well, another one's moving through with some very heavy rains. It's one. The other aspect of this storm that's kind of been, or the storms today that's been kind of overlooked, is that the rainfall rates have been really impressive. We have a very rich low-level moisture right now, and so these thunderstorms are feeding off of that. In addition to the hail and locally gusty winds, there's also been some pretty good downpours too.
Yeah. And
that's something else to think about. With standing water on the roads, you have to be really careful driving through this stuff too, with these downpours reducing visibility. Also, a couple of good thunderstorms down in the low country too, down in Jasper, Beaufort, and Colleton counties. Another special weather statement down there with some gusty winds. They mentioned gusts maybe to 55 miles an hour. The Charleston Weather Service office did with that storm, and it looked too, in addition to the hail risk too. So we'll continue to keep an eye on these storms as they rotate around that upper low as it heads our way tonight.
Yeah, here's a look at some of the local storm reports that so many of you have sent in and the Weather Service has verified. And to paint this picture for our audience, our audio listeners tonight, the Weather Service verifying hail reports, a handful of them out there, including this one, where we had a business report dime-size hail near Allendale here, another business reporting hail, and then a whole handful of them in that Augusta area on both sides of the river, including, there it is, there's Tim Pounds. I think this is maybe him there, somewhere near Martinez. You know, we were talking about how things vary neighborhood to neighborhood, and Tim saw dime-sized hail. This is somebody else in Martinez reporting 1.25 inches. So I think that's slightly bigger, if I'm not mistaken, than a dime. And so there all again goes to show you, just to drive home our point from earlier tonight, how one neighborhood to the next, they need every report they can get. So thank you to everyone who has been sending in storm reports. However it is that you have been sending in storm reports, they have been much appreciated. And in closing, Frank mentioned the the rainfall threat as well too. That green polygon there in Gaston County expected to expire in the next few moments here as the Catawba River looks to be returning back within its banks following a flash flood warning there in the Charlotte metro area. So we'll keep an eye on this the next couple of days, guys, and remind folks that they can always get this fancy red ticker that is scrolling at the bottom of my particular box here anytime by watching the Carolina Weather Net. That is a streaming service we built for you, the Carolina Weather fan. You can watch it anytime for free, any place you watch YouTube, from your smartphone to your computer to your smart TV, whatever it may be, for real-time alerts, conditions, sky cams, forecast, and more. I had it on today, and I was watching as we were bouncing around from all the sky cams and all the radars, watching all those storms pop off today. So happy spring, everybody, and happy daylight savings time.
Happy?
Daylight saving. No,
Thank you, Frank. And Jared, are you pro standard time?
I'm pro UTC for all. So just eliminate time zones, make everybody run on UTC. And
sunrise at 11:30.
Yeah,
solar noon at 17:30. Sunset at 23:30.
Yep, exactly. UTC for all. Let's just watch the world burn. And tomorrow is also National Disappearing Broadcast Meteorologist Day.
Is that where they wear green leotards?
They're all going to wear green tomorrow, aren't they?
Because it's St. Patrick's Day.
Great. I look forward to it. I do not.
I'm a fan of not screwing with the clocks anymore. Just pick one or the other and stick with it. That's what I'm in favor of.
I think we could all agree on that. So I'm going to let that be the last word.
Time is a human construct.
Yes, I get the last.
Frank, thank you for wearing your Sherlock Holmes two-brimmed hat tonight. And give our thanks again to Melissa when you see her at work tomorrow. Jared, thank you for your perspective and your input as well. And here's our true closing thought, folks. There's still time to sign up for, yes, you guessed it, the Advanced Skywarn Storm Spotter class from the Carolina Weather Group and the National Weather Service, Tuesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. It's virtual. It's free. Do you need to take the basic class before taking the advanced class? It's recommended. So if you missed our basic class, you can check your weather.gov local forecast office to see if they're offering a basic class near you. If you can't find one, feel free to come and join us. You're still welcome. We'd still love to have you there. But do see if you can find that basic class. There are a number of them happening this month as we've just wrapped up Severe Weather Preparedness Week, and we are really getting all leveled up on how we can be active weather participants. So whether it's CoCoRaHS, whether it's MPing, whether it's Skywarn Spotter, we hope that you across the Carolinas or whatever it is you may be watching or listening to us become an active part of our broader weather community, because that's really what this is. This is one big community effort, and none of us could do it. National Weather Service couldn't do it. Broadcast meteorologists couldn't do it without the eyes and the ears of the community. So thank you very much to everyone who is already actively participating. All right, that's enough for me. I'm James. That's Frank. That's Jared. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out wherever you get your audio podcasts. Stay weather aware, and we'll see you back here again real soon.